can you do on midnight that you can't do on Cardano? And what can you do on Cardano that you can't do on midnight?
Definitely you don't have zero knowledge type of flow on Cardano.
Yeah.
You don't have the protection of the data. You don't have the protection of the metadata. Use cases that need data privacy would not work kind of in the same way on Cardano. Other things that we have at midnight is the ability to reserve capacity and guarantee SLA. The ability to do a price prediction so you can just pay with fiat and know exactly how much you're going to spend. These properties don't exist on Cardano.
Hello, thank you so much for clicking this video today. I really appreciate it. This is going to be an exciting one. Midnight is on its way. We've been hearing a lot about it. You might have just watched the panel that happened downstairs. We're going to get some more details about what's to come with Midnight. And today I'm actually with the CEO of Midnight. His name's Eran Barak. And how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, are you enjoying Dubai so far?
Yes, it's an exciting place.
It is very exciting. I know the engineering here is pretty crazy to me, coming from America.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just to jump right into it, what is Midnight for someone that's never heard of it before?
So Midnight is a fourth generation blockchain network. We've really looked at various previous generation blockchains and try to take the best of all these and try to kind of upgrade the areas that we saw we could. But we're focusing on data protection. So that means that we can, using zero knowledge technology, shield data and metadata. And that gives you a leg up over some of the other chains out there.
Awesome. I was reading a little bit online about Midnight. And one of the things I saw is there's really going to be options for both a public ledger and a private ledger. So knowing that, what is that reason? Is it really just compliance?
It's actually to allow you to have a selective disclosure. You can decide what you want to put here versus there. I'll give you an example of a use case where this becomes kind of really useful. Voting. You want to have privacy and shield the actual votes, but you want to have the list of candidates in a public ledger so they are all known and public. If you hold the public information off-chain, you risk the situation where that data could be modified or tampered with. So some use cases need both private and public. Some just use public, some just use private.
So, Charles mentioned earlier in our podcast, he said really it's a hybrid model. He said it's really a cross between a layer 2 and a side chain. And I wanted to kind of dive into that deeper. What makes it really a hybrid, and also kind of, what makes it a fourth generation blockchain looking at the other competitors?
Sure. So let me first tackle the partner chain as we kind of refer to it. Midnight is not a layer 2. We do not require Cardano or any other infrastructure to operate. But we do have a strategic partnership with Cardano. We use Cardano as a partner chain to help us launch and get these to decentralization. And in exchange, we offer various kind of incentives and values to the Cardano ecosystem. So Stakepool operators and exchanges would get additional revenue sources and incentives. People who are building applications would get ability to build new use cases and have a fund that helps them kind of build things together and create more interoperability. And finally, we're going to do some token drop to the Cardano ecosystem to really bring us all closer together. They win, we win. It has to be a great partnership.
Yeah, so this token drop, you guys may have mentioned that on stage. Maybe that's why everybody was cheering in the background. And I didn't know why, because I was actually on another stage doing a talk. Just essentially ADA holders in general, they're going to get this airdrop, or is it going to be purely from SPOs, from staking?
I will have to disappoint your viewers by saying we will disclose more of that information in the upcoming period.
That makes sense, and I have no problem with that answer. When you're talking about tokens, you got to be very careful, and sometimes it really takes time to iron out those details, and it's such an important thing, and you can't really go back from it.
But I'll give you some bit of information that I did share today. We have a shielded token that was announced called Dust. That allows us to kind of conduct transactions while preserving privacy. But shielded tokens, as we know from other chains, are very hard to get liquidity for. So we actually are introducing a second token on-chain, which is unshielded. And these kind of work together to provide liquidity and security while maintaining privacy. This dual tokenomics approach is quite novel, and what I think is one of the reasons why they view us as a fourth generation blockchain network.
That's interesting. So that privacy you mentioned, you mentioned, ZK snarks. Can you explain what that is for kind of an average viewer that really, hasn't heard of that before?
I'll give an example. A lot of people ask me, explain to me in real world use case like zero knowledge. How can you prove to someone something without giving away any information? So let's say you and I want to share some secret, or I have a secret and you say, I know also that secret, and I ask you, prove this to me, but do that without disclosing any information. I'll give you a real world example. Let's say we have a safe, and the safe has a combination, and I know the combination, and you say, I also know the combination. The way I would ask you to prove that to me is by actually opening the safe, taking a piece of paper and writing a sentence, putting that in the safe, locking it back. Now I'll say, read that sentence back to me. The only way you can do that is by actually knowing the code to the safe and reading that sentence back. But having that sentence read out loud even doesn't disclose any information about the code to the safe. So zero knowledge is all about the ability to provide proofs without disclosing the information underneath.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me, and that was a great way of explaining it. In the same way that you have a cryptocurrency wallet, when you send a transaction, you have a public and you have a private key. You sign that and you send the transaction, and when that happens, you're not exposing your private key, you're only exposing that public key. And my guess with zero knowledge proofs, the public key is the hash that can't be read, and the private key is what allows you to kind of read that.
It's a little bit more than that, but yeah. I would agree that's also an example of a pair where there is a portion that is a secret and a portion that is public.
Okay. And then do you think that this is necessary to accomplish decentralized identity?
It's not, but it complements that story. Yeah. So let's use some use case, that kind of real world use case where you need that kind of zero knowledge case. I'll give you first a use case from everyday life, and then we'll go into a business use case. If let's say you and I go, if we finish this interview and we go out to a bar, and the bartender comes to us and say, well, show me some ID to prove that you're over a certain age. The only fact that the bartender needs to see is whether we are of the right age. Yeah. But what we usually do is we pull out, let's say, a driver's license or a passport or some form of ID, and we show that to the bartender. Well, now we've just disclosed our name, our full birthday, our home address. Maybe we have some driver's license restrictions, a whole bunch of information that doesn't really need to be shared. Mm-hmm. With zero knowledge, you can just answer the question of, I'm allowed to drink, or I'm allowed to vote, or I'm allowed to access something without revealing the information that supports that kind of assertion.
Yeah.
So let's take a real life use case. I'm going to take a medical use case that has nothing to do with anything kind of that we're talking today, but I believe we can really leapfrog medicine research by orders of magnitude. The challenge is the data is there, but it can't be accessed. Health information is secured by all these rules and laws about patient privacy. So if we wanted to research a new drug, it would be very hard. We have to request the information. It comes from multiple sources. It has to be scrubbed, cleaned. And in the end, you're looking and saying like, well, that's not what I needed. And you have to make another query and repeat the entire process. Well, if we put medical records on a blockchain with zero knowledge, like Midnight, we can make a zero knowledge proof query to the data, like how many men over 40 had long COVID and have this type of symptom, and then modify and manipulate that query with maybe AI or some other engine, and we can very rapidly identify patterns and treatments that can cure cancer or some other diseases. And we can do that without violating the patient privacy. Not only that, zero knowledge is a double blind. So the pharma let's say, company that is doing the query doesn't even disclose the query they are doing to the data records holder, let's say the insurance company. So they can later patent that drug and actually make a business and profit out of it. Both sides are kept blind. Zero knowledge technology can unlock a whole range of use cases that can make the world a much better place. We are on the brink of history change.
So is Midnight really, more of a focus on, business to business? Or is it really, you mentioned as a fourth generation blockchain, when you look at Cardano, I was on stage earlier and someone, a lot of people view it as a Swiss Army knife that it could just do anything. And, obviously that's not true. There are a lot more tooling needs to be built for, and there are certain use cases that, are perfect for Cardano. But, is Midnight really like an evolution of Cardano, or is it really focusing on different use cases?
Midnight is an evolution of Cardano just in the sense of it's an evolution of third generation blockchains into kind of the next generation, but it does not use Cardano technology under the hood. We had to build it from the ground up. But what I will say is that despite all the development that we had in the blockchain industry, we have still yet to see enterprises really adopt blockchain as a mainstream technology.
Yeah.
And so some of the stuff that we're doing with Midnight is not just putting data protection that would finally allow enterprises to put confidential, commercially sensitive data on chain, which they haven't done with any of the public chains to date, but also address things like price predictability. How can you use a blockchain or any kind of technology if you don't know how much it's going to cost you to run it? How can you use it if you can have an SLA that guarantees a service is available? All these blockchains are all fighting about who's going to be faster, but what's the matter if you have the fastest train if you can't get a ticket? You got to start with the table stakes of what enterprises need. So I think Midnight as a fourth generation brings those assets that will finally help us cross the chasm and allow enterprises to use the benefits of blockchain technology.
Yeah. And, I think that is what most people and what most enterprises want is privacy of transactions. I mean, I made a tweet last week and I said, who would rather have all of their Cardano transactions be private? And almost everyone said yes, right? But if you look at instances like, Tornado Cash, or if you look at Monero, governments have really come after that privacy, and it's because they currently have access to, all of our ledgers, our bank accounts. At any time, they can just request access and they get that. So, how do you guys plan to deal with that? I know you mentioned you have the other token that's also open, but, given that people are forced to use that, it kind of defeats the purpose, right?
They're not forced to use that, but I'll explain.
I mean, just from the government perspective.
No. Great question. So, compliance with regulation really hinges on a combination of things. It has to be in context of what you're doing, what application you're running, what audience you're serving, which jurisdiction you're operating in. If I have an application that does, let's say, where do we go to lunch? It doesn't need to fulfill compliance or regulatory requirements. If I do a money service, then probably it does. But what it needs to do really depends on what it does, in which jurisdiction it runs, which audience it's serving, which data it's accessing, et cetera, et cetera. The blockchain cannot make those decisions for the application. It's really application dependent. What we do is provide the hooks and the tools so an application that does need to have compliance features built into it has all the capabilities to do that on a blockchain and not be kind of isolated and have to be non-compliant. So we provide the inroads to do that, but it's up to the application to build the right things for the jurisdiction and the activity they are doing.
So if it was necessary, they could essentially have it be private, but also give that, whatever jurisdiction the key if needed so.
Yes, but I don't know as a blockchain which is the jurisdiction, who is the authority, what are they doing. It all happens at the application level. Mm-hmm. I just need to make sure they have the right hooks to invoke the right functions so they can fulfill the obligations they need to do. But if you have another application that doesn't have such a kind of requirement, then they'll do something different.
Yeah. Charles mentioned both, proof of work and proof of stake. What comes first?
For Midnight?
Yes.
We are going to start with proof of stake. And through what you heard on stage with a technology called Minotaur, we're going to be able to introduce proof of work and other types of consensuses into the mix. So there's going to be a kind of a rolling introduction of additional things.
Yeah. So with that proof of work, Charles has kind of mentioned like, oh, well, Cardano SPOs will be able to run this. And, when you first hear that, I feel like many people's first thought is like they're going to be using the Cardano chain to actually run Midnight. But after a little bit of digging, that's not how it is. And he's also mentioned like, oh, Bitcoin miners can participate in this as well. So the proof of stake and the proof of work is going to be entirely new based on your guys' research over the past few years. Because I remember the paper from IOG from maybe like 6 years ago about Bitcoin and about proof of work and about making it better, really. So. Is that kind of the case? Like it's essentially going to be a better version of proof of work by looking at existing proof of work concepts and then a better version of proof of stake.
It's not necessarily a better version, but rather the ability to actually mix multiple consensuses at the same time running together on a single chain. So you actually have an added security because you can bring in things and mix them together.
That makes sense. So it doesn't really, like the original papers that you guys wrote, like Ouroboros, does it rely on those?
No.
So what about like kind of the newer, like Ouroboros Omega, for example, like any?
Those will continue to exist in the Cardano ecosystem. We will definitely look at those kind of options as part of the consensus algorithms that we kind of deploy and roll out in Midnight. Mm-hmm. But we're yet to kind of provide more information on that.
Yeah, that's fair. So, are you guys still following kind of that same ethos that IOG has always had about, research and then development? Specifically, peer-reviewed research. Is Midnight following that same strategy, or
Yes, it is. So the technology that we have built at Midnight with the zero knowledge and all the other pieces is based on a paper called Kachina that was a research paper that was written. And it just took us a very long time to implement those concepts. Yeah. And we're finally kind of bringing it out to the market.
Awesome. That's very exciting. I forgot to ask a little bit about your background. How'd you end up in this chair today building, Midnight?
So I started my career as a software developer, moved over to product and then into marketing and then into the dark side of sales and everything else. I've been with small and big companies and built mainly ecosystems with a lot of focus on privacy and encryption technology. Last year, I was involved for a while with Parity, working with Gavin Wood. And then Charles came knocking on my door and said, listen, I've got this amazing project I want to bring to market. And I'm really excited. We've got an amazing team that is totally rocking it, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so that's exciting. I mean, when did you guys start working on this, and where are we at now? I remember reading, some people are posting their DevNet invites, and so the DevNet's coming. But yep. Where are we? When's it coming, and when do we start?
Sure. So it's been 5 years in the making, almost 5 years in the making. So a very long time. As I said, the Kachina paper was written, but it was very hard to figure out how to implement it, and we had a few tries. But as we say, Midnight has it looks like the logo looks like the clock, right? The clock is ticking. It's 10 days away. November 13th, 10 days from now, we're going to start onboarding folks on the DevNet. We had over 1,000 dev teams apply to access Midnight. I feel bad that we're disappointing some that we can't onboard everybody on day one, but we're trying to add more resources so we can add more. But DevNet is rolling out. It's amazing. And then we're going to have testnet come at the heels of that early next year. And beyond that, there is a very detailed roadmap that we will disclose soon.
Yeah. So is that kind of mostly done at random? Like I know that they're like just who got selected for the DevNet.
No. So for those people that got disappointed, I'm sorry. We will have all of you. We love you all. But it was really, I'd say more than anything based on what people wrote that they wanted to do with the DevNet. Yeah. So those of you that actually invested in telling us an exciting story of what you're going to do on the DevNet, you guys got kind of I'd say a high score and ended up kind of being on the short list for being first, but we're going to get to everybody else.
Yeah, what's funny thing, like I got denied for Atrium, but my developer got accepted. So I was like, we're still kind of in, right?
He potentially invested a little bit extra time.
He's a better writer
to write what he was going to do, and got us excited, and that's why we said we want that guy.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, how? You mentioned the roadmap's like kind of yet to be revealed, but how many people have been brought into the DevNet? And this DevNet specifically, when Cardano launched, it was the ITN, and it was just a test net. This DevNet, is it going to kind of be like the real network, or is it just a test net version of the network to start playing with it and learning about it?
It's just a test net, and we're not even exposing all the technology that we built. We selected a subset that we really want to get people kind of to experiment with and comfortable with. And we're just going to kind of start exposing additional features that the technology is already ready with in the kind of the upcoming weeks and months as we kind of roll into probably a more public test net and kind of let everybody kind of into the door.
Yeah. So, with that, you guys are going to be using a TypeScript-based language. Is that kind of going to be in the DevNet, or is that kind of still under maintenance?
No.
So what's that language called? And kind of tell me some more about it.
So it's TypeScript.
Yeah.
It's TypeScript. The only thing that we've added is kind of the ability to, for zero knowledge, you need circuits. And those are actually pretty sophisticated cryptographically. Not everybody knows how to write zero knowledge circuits. I'd say most people don't. So what we did is we created a library of Lego building blocks already ready and made. If anybody wants to write their own circuit, they're more than welcome. But if they want to just use some of the ready-made, easy. They just pick up one of those that we pre-created for them. But together, if I put all that together, we got, if you will, a language called Compact that feels like TypeScript, 99%, plus some extra zero knowledge kind of goodies in there.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and I'm shocked to hear it's 10 days away. The clock is really ticking.
We wanted something so simple that everybody can be a developer.
Yeah,
I don't want to see people had to learn all these weird, esoteric, domain-specific languages. Mm-hmm. It's just hard. Why do it hard? We want to make it easy for everybody to get on the train.
Yeah, we use TypeScript in our backend, and I think our product would work with Midnight depending on kind of the applications that are on there, because it just aggregates the various financial services into one and teaches you how to use them. And I think TypeScript, the amount of people that actually use that language would be much higher than say Haskell, and that's why you see Cardano, Akit coming to Cardano, which is kind of a JavaScript based language. So yeah, I'm curious. What can you do on Midnight that you can't do on Cardano, and what can you do on Cardano that you can't do on Midnight?
Well, definitely you don't have zero knowledge type of flow on Cardano.
Yeah.
You don't have the protection of the data. You don't have the protection of the metadata. So use cases that need data privacy would not work kind of in the same way on Cardano. Other things that we have at Midnight is kind of the ability to reserve capacity and guarantee SLA, the ability to do a price prediction so you can just pay with fiat and know exactly how much you're going to spend. These properties don't exist on Cardano. With respect to the reverse, I'd say Cardano today it's a much bigger ecosystem that has various interoperabilities and various other things going for it. And I suspect it will continue to thrive, and we will be great partners.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really all my questions. I appreciate your time today. I definitely learned a lot about Midnight. It was a good time. And I hope to do this again in the future. And once I'm in the DevNet, I'll probably have a lot more questions for you. Because I really like this stuff. It's great. I learned so much from just doing these in-person podcasts from people that are in the weeds every day, learning about zero knowledge proofs and, building new chains. So I really appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a good rest of your time in Dubai.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.